Harberlin Hill from the New York Botanical Gardens, and this is the Plants is Liberation series. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you please share your name, your pronouns, and how you would describe your work?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Maryah Greene. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I go by the plant doctor and stylist here in New York City, or just about everywhere since Instagram is really just like taken off. But yeah, that's my title.
Awesome. And could you tell us a little bit more about what you do in terms of like the plant doctor and styling?
Yeah, so I do anything when it comes to saving a plant that's in distress or just matching future or current plant parents with the right plants for their space. So whether that's you moving into a brand new apartment and needing to figure out what plants can live based on the lighting you have, or if you have a plant that your great great grandmother passed on and it's just looking really sad and you are freaking out, not really sure how to care for it or if it needs a new pot, I come to you with all of the things and all of the tools and education, and we do it together to make sure your plants are happy and healthy.
Oh my God, that's so awesome. I'm definitely of my friends like group chat, the one who people are always like, they're sending me pictures of plants, like, what's wrong with this thing? And
Yes.
here. So like, what a brilliant service to offer people.
And that's how it started too. Just everyone slowly but surely at a bar would just be like, hey, can you look at this? And then finally had a really good friend of mine who said, everyone in New York has a side hustle. You need to make this a thing, even if you're just charging Venmo. And now 3 years later, it's my full-time job.
That's amazing. I love to hear that. Do you have an early memory with plants? Kind of what sparked this passion for you?
So I'm a military brat. So I moved around every 3 years, with the exception of living in right outside of Tokyo for 9 years. So I've always really been surrounded by nature. We lived in the countryside outside of Tokyo, but growing up, I remember my mom having a few houseplants here and there, and I always just loved the feeling that they brought into the space that we lived in. However, I feel like when I do get this question, it's very much like we want to make the bridge between like, oh, this happened when you were younger, and so this informs your like current state. I really think it's my love for teaching. I have a teaching background. I taught third and fifth grade, and I came to New York to study education and literacy for my master's program. And so I think after doing some really hard thinking and talking with my mom about it, we came to the conclusion that I genuinely just like seeing things grow. I like the starting of something, seeing how much love and education you can put into it, and then seeing the end result. And so I think plants are my medium right now since I'm not in the classroom. But if I really had to think of the earliest memory, it would probably be bringing plants into my classroom space.
I love that. That's such a like lovely story to even if it wasn't like intentional, how it came in like with the education background. And also just having like such a worldly way of growing up in Tokyo to bringing plants in all of those different spaces. And now it's your side hustle turned full-time.
Yes, only in New York, I feel like. But even just during like story time, the kids would be like, wait, where's Verdi? The name of the plant was Verdi. And so we could not have story time without having the plant right at the desk. And so they really set the standard for what it means to have plants in our space.
What type of plant was it that you had?
It was a Dieffenbachia plant. It was a really, really tiny baby one. And it only had like 4 or 5 leaves. But the beautiful part of that was when a new leaf came in, it was so dramatic because there weren't so many. And so the kids would just sit around it and just stare at it all day. And it was really their moment to be intentional while also listen to the story. It was great.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that so much. um, yeah, I feel like right now, more than ever, like people are really interested in house plants. They want to bring house plants into their home. Like plants are having a moment, but like definitely house plants are having a huge moment. But
Right.
it's really hard to take care of house plants. Like as a gardener, like I actually have more luck. Sometimes I feel like with my plants outside than my ones inside. So I wonder like how you grapple with those challenges of not only taking care of your own plants, but you're also trying to help other people keep their plants alive too.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I need to shadow you because I feel the complete opposite. I feel like there are only a few factors I need to manage inside. It's someone's heating, it's someone's AC, how much they're watering, and any of the pets that they have. Like I feel like I can deal with those factors, but it could start snowing in July in New York City. Like I can't keep up. So it feels like the easier route. Um, but the other thing that I feel is really important with people deciding where they want their plants and also how I manage it is part of the consultation process is me sitting down and seeing what people can handle. So more than just you liking the Monstera, I want to hear how often you travel, how often you're even home, or what your intentions are with your plants. Do you want something you want to water every day, or do you want to miss this? And that's really how I decided the plants I'd have in my space. I'm never home because I'm caring for everyone else's plants. So I have my large bird of paradise that I only need to water once every 4 weeks because it's in this massive pot. So you're really picking and choosing what works for your lifestyle as opposed to, oh, this looks pretty, I hope I can keep it alive.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's a good mindset to have because I feel like we kind of just want to bring these plants into our home, but also remembering that like their natural environments might have been like the Amazon. So,
right.
how can they thrive in our like New York City window? So being realistic, but also like still wanting to see what works.
Exactly. You're essentially every day creating little South America in this corner of your apartment and misting and trying to get the humidity right. And I wish that people sometimes would take a step back and think, this is not, I can't even control the heat in my apartment. The baseboards are on fire. It is not my fault that this peace lily is not happy, you know?
That's really real. Very hot in New York City apartments this time of year.
We have rather be hot than cold.
Yeah, exactly. So as a Black person, we have been like historically had a pretty difficult relationship with plants from the forced violence of coming into this country as enslaved on plantations, planting, tending to crops, harvesting crops. But it's really like the foundation of what America was built on. Mm-hmm. However, now, like speeding into today, there's been such a beautiful celebration I've been seeing of Black people re-embracing plants, gardening, house plants. So I'm just wondering, like, do you feel like you are reconstructing this narrative in your own work? If you don't feel like that's something that's your intention, that's fine too. But I kind of just wonder how you're thinking about that history as opposed to what's happening today.
Yeah, absolutely. I often ask myself the question, and honestly, when I started, my big thing was plants should be accessible and affordable to everyone. And with houseplants booming and people loving them, Monstera deliciosa probably was like $40 3 years ago. And now that same size is 120. So we've seen it, but more than just the price, it was where these plant shops were located. I was living in Bed-Stuy at the time. I could not find a plant shop within a 2-mile radius. I had to come either to Williamsburg or into the city to find a healthy looking plant that was somewhat affordable. And so I wondered what it looked like to have accessibility, easy accessibility to elements that promoted self-care, like watering your plants or getting a small tabletop plant that's not valued at $100 and that we can get in our own neighborhood. And then the step beyond that is educating someone on how to care for it. It seems like everyone's grandmother's auntie had like a pothos hanging in the window that was super pretty and it was just the plant to have. So passing on that education, I think, is a way for people to bond and create those relationships amongst their family members. The other thing that I have made it sort of my mission to do is I operate under a sliding scale system. So every service that I offer, there's a low rate and then there's a high rate. So if one of the services is $100, you'll see the rate between $100 and $200. And as the client, you'll get to decide what rate you'd like to spend. And so if you decide to go with the higher amount, that additional money that Greene Piece collects puts away in a pot. That way, the next person that comes to me and has a bird of paradise that their grandmother gave them, and they just can't afford the services, we can then supplement it because someone else paid it forward. So I'm trying to create a system of equity while also making sure that self-care is accessible, because what does it mean for us to have agency over the things that built this country and to own the education that we created, even though it's just trendy right now for other people? So that's my long, short answer.
No, I love that. And I love the that you're offering sliding scale so that people still feel like it's accessible to them, and how if you do pay full price, that's going to someone else who might not be able to pay full price. I think that's a really beautiful intention to put into your business model. And as well, oh, sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say it was hard. It's a tough decision to make because as a small business owner who came from teaching, I have no idea how to do accounting and like I was getting advice like, no, you need set prices. This is going to make things go all over the place. And I just thought, what would it look like if everyone got what they needed? There's a difference between everything being equal and everything being equitable. And I wanted to create an equitable practice that I could keep up with. So I'm really optimistic that people continue to use the service the right way. And after doing it for a year and a half now, I would say 98% of my clients use it the right way. If they can afford to live in fancy Tribeca in a condo on the penthouse or in a penthouse, they use the system correctly. So it restores my faith in humanity when I go back to work too.
I love that. And I also love that you help people with like these legacy plants as well too. And it's not just like bringing in new plants, because we all have like an auntie or a grandmother or grandfather, whoever, who has a plant that's been in the family. And so he gets passed down to you, and kind of helping carry that legacy is really beautiful.
It's probably the hardest and most nerve-wracking part of my job, because my fear is killing this plant. And so I think it was 2.5 years ago, I sat down for a week and I Googled all these different waivers and contracts, and I basically made a waiver that essentially says, I am not Mother Nature. I am not Adam or Eve. And if something happens to this plant, I can't be held. You can't hold me liable, but at the same time, I will put all of my effort, love, and care into making sure that this plant makes it. And thankfully, I have not had any pass away, but people really have attachments to their plants or their babies or their family members. And I understand the responsibility that comes with that. You can't put a price on it.
Totally. Yeah. People come to the botanical gardens and they're like, I have this like 20-year-old like philodendron. Like, can we keep it? Can it come here? I don't even know if I feel like I have the capacity to keep that plant alive, but I love that is just having a plant for multiple generations of your life is so cool. Like I have a pothos that I brought from Connecticut that I still have. And it's just like, wow, this plant has seen me through multiple times in my life. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it acts like a timeline or a marker of your life. I have a really long mini monstera. And it's just this really long vine. And I think of every leaf as a moment in my life. And that's one thing I promote clients to do if they are in a hard time in their life. A lot of times my clients are either in the middle of a divorce or ending a divorce, or they just moved to New York City, or they just had a baby and it's a fresh start. So plants can really serve as that piece that represents time and how far they've come.
Amazing. And I'm wondering if at all, has the pandemic shifted your work in any way? Because I know you work really closely with people in their home.
Yeah.
I wonder how that's shifted it.
Oh my God, yes. I thought so. Right before when the pandemic started, like that March, April, I was still in grad school studying education, and I had fully intended on becoming a teacher, and this would just still be my side hustle. And so the pandemic is going on, and it's almost as if everyone came into their house collectively and said, oh crap, that plant is dying. I didn't even realize it the past 5 years. It probably needs a little help, because we were all bored. And so I'm thinking Greene Piece, my side hustle, is about to shut down. Everyone's inside. I went from maybe getting a request once every 2 weeks to, during the pandemic, having like 10 a day. And so I was just like, okay, I either need to fully lean in and get my ducks in a row. I got the LLC. I got all the like businessy things. I got a crash course on how to run a business, I think, in the month of May. And I'm so happy I did that, because then during the height of Black Lives Matter, during that June, July season, everyone was supporting not only small Black-owned businesses, but anything that had to do with self-care. And so I was working with plants at the time. So the pandemic kicked it off. I was in every piece of press, from Vogue to Glamour and I'd just been writing lesson plans a couple months before. So I was so grateful, and still am very grateful. But it forced me to really put my all into my business. And I'm so grateful for all of the support that I've gotten from people, because in hindsight, I don't know how I did it, because I was still caring for people's plants while also trying to figure out how to save for taxes and what a 1099 was. And they don't teach you that as a small business owner. It's you figure it out while also having to like go on Good Morning America the next day. So it was a journey, but business definitely picked up during the pandemic.
I'm glad to hear that it didn't, like, it was actually a positive time for you. And that kind of is perfectly into my next question, which is like, do you have any tips for young Black professionals who are interested in career in plants? Because like people might be intimidated or they might want to pursue at a young age, like a more, I don't want to say traditional career path, but like, it's like,
Yeah.
to be a doctor or a lawyer. So like to release that and to pursue a career in plants, like, do you have any advice?
Absolutely. When I really started leaning into, I keep calling it this plant thing, like it's not my full-time job. When I leaned into Greene Piece and working with plants as my full-time job, I often heard, and while I was finishing up my degree, all of the time I heard, oh, are you studying botany? Or how qualified are you? You're studying education. This doesn't seem like it fits. And there's this notion, especially with older generations, that you're not qualified to do something unless you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a degree. And I completely stand by qualifications to make sure that you're actually good at your job. But at the same time, I feel like there should be some consideration about around what it means to be self-taught and to be naturally gifted at something and to put your all into working at perfecting your craft. And so while I was up late at night writing papers for studying education, I spent probably double the hours learning what makes a monstera thrive, die, unhappy, everything in between. And so I say that to say that your craft is the one thing that you can put your all into to perfect. And just because you don't have a degree, it does not mean that you are less than or that you're any less qualified than the next person. And to be honest, I still very much would love to get a botany degree, but I don't want to pay for it. So I think that a lot of people would really enjoy hearing the support that comes from just putting your all into something and knowing that being gifted at it is just enough.
Exactly. No, that's really well said. Like, you don't have to go to school for everything. Also, learning on your own is really valid too. And sometimes just makes the more financial sense in that moment.
Yeah.
That it's not something that you should do down the road or whatever, but everyone has a different path for how they end up where they are.
Absolutely. And I guess to branch off of that, another small piece of advice, have a contract for everything. If you're an artist, if you are working in plants, if you are selling shoes, whatever it is, have a contract, because I cannot tell you how many times, even just with friends and people who want to support you, they might have one small plant and it's just one small thing that needs to be done, but you just never know when you're providing a service. And so just protect yourself. And I feel like that's not spoken about enough. And sometimes it can feel kind of scary sending a friend or like a loved one or someone you look up to a contract because you don't want them to think that you don't trust them. And if that person doesn't take that contract or doesn't want to sign it, that's a flag for you that their intentions may not have been in the right place anyway. So contracts are your best friend when it comes to using your face or providing any sort of skill. I really, really push that all the time.
That's really, really wise advice. When thinking about liberation, I always think about acts of freedom and escaping oppression. Do you feel like plants liberate you? And if so, how do plants liberate you?
They do. I would not be doing this work as much as I do if they did not liberate me. However, I feel like I definitely walk the line. Like as an accountant, you can love numbers, but when it's time to work, you're just like, oh God, and you just sort of get used to them. But plants liberate me because, again, like we started out talking about, they really bridge the connection between my ability to teach and work with children and watching things grow. And so seeing a plant either start from seed or really tiny and seeing it grow over time into this big, massive thing, it's a moment for me to think of how far I've come and all of the effort and work I put into caring for it. And more than just watering it or dusting the leaves or giving it the right amount of sun, the one thing that I take away from it that's the most liberating feeling and idea is sometimes you just have to let them be. I think that we constantly are trying to decide how much water something needs, how much light. But at the same time, one of the best things you can do for your plant is to just let it grow and it'll tell you what it needs over time. And I think that I need to take that advice more often. Like, just let things be and they will grow and you can address problems when they come up. But what does it look like to just enjoy and reap the benefits of all of the hard work and the effort you put into something? And I feel like that's the season that I'm currently in, and it feels really good. It's scary, but it feels really good.
Yes, pouring back into yourself is always needed for sure.
Yes, a really good friend of mine, Victoria Walls, told me a few years ago, remember to water your plants first. And that sounds like such a subtle saying, maybe corny to some, but I say it to myself once a day because I was putting my effort into running up to the Bronx and then to Brooklyn and then to Queens to water everyone's plants. And I'm like, not only are my plants dying, I'm also dying. I'm tired. I
Mm,
haven't had water today. So it's really important to take care of yourself. And that is the best way to liberate yourself.
amazing. Yeah, really good advice, really important advice right now and always.
Yeah.
Do you have a plant that you feel like you would want to be if you were a plant?
She's right here. She's a Monstera deliciosa.
Yes.
And she's my favorite. And I feel like I would be, or I am, a Monstera deliciosa. We're literally matching. That's very sweet. Not intentional
Plants.
at all. But I like Monstera deliciosas because they tell you what they need. I think they get sort of droopy and leathery when it's time to water them. But the other thing is, I get so excited when a new leaf comes in because the fenestrations always look different. And it's just a reminder that you can be pushing out the same work and putting in the same energy. And it might just feel like everything is the same until that new leaf comes out and it looks completely different from the others. It's a really exciting and happy plant that I feel like keeps people on their toes. I'm sure if you asked my friends and family, they'd be like, yep, that's very main character energy with you. But I love a Monstera deliciosa. They're the it girls. I love them.
So cool. And I also love that they're so easy to propagate. It's like
I
crazy how easy they
know.
are. You can
Not
get
to
so
get
many
mistaken.
plants.
You can, and you can pass them on to others, not to be mistaken with like, you can just make another me. But at the same time, like, I'm to share for everybody. So
Still an
they're my
icon.
favorite. Yes, still an icon. They're my favorite plant to gift to other people because you could have the same exact, you could have two different cuttings from the same plant, but they look completely different.
Oh, I love that so much, Maryah. Would you have any upcoming projects that you would like to share or anything you want to shout out, workshops, work?
I never know until I'm there, until I show up. I feel like I get invited to things and then they're like, you're hosting. Um, yeah, in the summer, I have a really, really, really big project that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. And it's driving me insane. And I hate when my favorite person says something like this, but I feel like it is the culmination of my teaching experience and my work with plants. And I always thought I had to choose between the two. And I feel like they're finally coming together. So the end of summer, early fall will be the Greene Piece anniversary massive party in New York City, and we'll all be there. It'll be great. Maybe it's at the Botanical Garden. Who
Ooh, we would love that. Um, that's really exciting. Where can people find you on the internet? So if they want to stay up to date on what you're doing.
Yeah, you can visit me at my website, yourgreenepiece.com, or the easiest way is Instagram. It's green with an E at the end, dot piece, as in piece of food or art piece. When I chose the name, I was thinking I wanted all of my spaces to be art pieces. And so I would call them green pieces. And then I realized that a green piece actually existed and it's kind of confusing. So hopefully you can find me. But you can just type my last name in and you should be able to find me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your time today.
Thank you for having me and happy Black History Month.
Yes, happy Black History Month.